Thank you for joining us today for Session 5 of Radio's Digital Transformation Series, Launch Your Digital Game Plan. My name is Christine Petcher, Director of Marketing at Marketron. All right, I'd like to walk you through a few housekeeping items before we get started. Just so everyone is aware, all participants are muted. We are recording today's session and it will be shared with all registrants afterwards. We do ask that you submit any questions you'd like to our presenters via the chat box. At the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Any unanswered questions, we will follow up with you with a team member, so please do not worry if we do not get to your question today. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our presenters today. We have with us JB Ozuna, Senior Director of Digital Strategy here at Marketron, and Steve Throneberry, National Director of Digital Sales Enablement for Marketron. JB and Steve, thank you so much for being with us today. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to you, JB, to get started.
Thanks, Christine. Appreciate the introduction, and we're happy to be speaking with all of you today. As we get going here, we're 5 presentations into this digital transformation that we've been walking you through, and we've been coaching you through, and we've seen through other companies. And as we get to the actual launch stage here, we want to maybe reiterate some things that we've said in earlier presentations, but then also coach you through what this launch plan looks like, and how do you drive the most engagement, the most activity, and then how do you maybe adapt and measure it along the way. So first off, we're going to discuss the commitment to this change and change management. And regardless of the size of your organization, you're going to deal with some portion of the personnel or the sales team that maybe is a bit resistant, and that may be due to prior experience or to just an uneasiness and an uncomfortable sense with purchasing new products and selling new products. And so what we really want to do is talk about how do you manage your organization through that. And we want to obviously engage with the employees, have them involved in the process, and talk about a collaborative change, but versus a top-down change. But we do need to start with the top, because top-down in this case may not mean a force, or I'm making this decision on my own for this organization, but you do have to, as a leadership within the station, show that you buy into the change, and there's a commitment to the new products, a commitment to the new training, to new margins, maybe to new compensation plans, and really commit to adapting along the way. If you're just starting, you're obviously not going to be first in the market with digital, but you can still be the best. And we think you can do that by engaging your workforce to co-create these strategic decisions, having open conversations around product, around pricing, around plan, and then most importantly, share the responsibility for success throughout the organization. So really, again, revisiting the steps that you're committing to, adapt along the way, measure, and then find out, which path may be best for you as you roll out these new products and this new plan. So let's talk about that plan. Here's a suggested rollout. We look at 5 steps along the way here. These are really 5 critical components to making your digital launch successful. The goal is really to create energy and a number of different touch points to maintain a consistent message about the opportunity that digital represents for your staff, for your products, for your brand, and your relationships with your advertisers and your buyers. You're going to be adding new products, new talking points, new dialogue, new training. You're probably going to be changing some workflows and some responsibilities, and really looking at how do we measure that, and then how do we layer on top of that ongoing digital education for the team so that they feel comfortable as the products evolve. The more you start selling these products, the more the deeper the questions may become from the other side, with your advertisers or your buyers asking about specific analytics within a product, or asking if your product can do this that competitors has said that theirs can. So really, looking at this whole 5-step plan, from the start will allow you to maybe anticipate some of those things and build out some paths here as you work your way through it. You really, though, can't stress enough, you really want to maintain that enthusiasm about the new products, the sales product process, and the revenue opportunity. Certainly step 5 there with incentives is a critical part to it. So let's talk a little bit about the first step here and the all staff launch event. Steve, what's been your experience with that?
Hey, JB. Hey, yeah. So this is really kind of and remember, any change is, there are pain points along the way with any change. We're just not agents of change as adults, right? So we always kind of resist those things. But this is where you can really make some memorable and significant movement in your organization just by how you start it, right? So it's an important thing to really point out and really focus on is, hey, how can I make this as memorable as possible? Because remember, as you move through this process and you're adding these new products, based on what JB just described as an ongoing learning process, you get that resistance and some reticence. So the more fun, the more engaged, the more active you are in that launch process. We have seen definitive differences in groups that have launched, low or low profile events to all in events. And let's talk about those and what those look like. So they could be as simple as a staff lunch. Now as you move to this and you're launching this out and you're having these conversations in your staff meetings and your sales meetings, make it something where there's a definitive change, a definitive line in the sand. And we've seen some really, really cool things out there. Like we've seen groups put banners in their office. I literally put them on the wall to just remind folks, hey, this is a change we're making and this is why we're making it. Because the really cool thing about this that we've seen is the increased revenue helps everybody in your organization. So it's not just, hey, look, let's just have a pizza lunch and let's talk about it, and then we never talk about it again, or we kind of begrudgingly talk about it in sales calls, or no, this is something we're saying we're making the commitment because of the shift in the market. So the digital growth has been dramatic. So that's not going to change. But as you look at these points, you can define, hey, look, let's talk about why we're making this change because of it's a growth strategy. We're trying to increase revenue, right? Every department in our company, in our radio group, is going to be involved in this process in one way or the other, right? So the more you know, and the more everyone knows, the better this actually works. And then look, talk about the details, talk about the ongoing process, and talk about that. Look, yeah, this is a completely new language. Selling digital is a completely new language to some sellers. So, what is going to be included in that process? And I think that when you look at what Marketron's included in this delivery side, the process from onboarding all the way through delivery, you can see the steps we're going to help you with that as well. And then outline, the timelines. What are our goals? Setting goals is one of the most, I think, most strategic things you can do, probably most underutilized thing you can do, but make them revenue goals, make them fun, make them where people can say, hey, look, and what can I actually receive out of this? And then the one thing we want to help you with, and the one thing you should talk about internally all the time, is showcasing what success looks like, right? So what does a successful integration of selling radio and digital actually look like? What should we expect? What are we trying to accomplish? Who are we going to go after? Things like building hit lists and things like making promotions with your best advertisers and showcasing value to them, and then capturing that you can utilize moving forward. But I think this is the first step, and this is really, really important to actually showcase. But the thing I want to really, as we move on to that next slide, is talking through the importance of the training component. So JB, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Absolutely, Steve, and great point with really showcasing throughout the building. And you'll see bullet point here, one, is training the entire organization on the digital product. That may sound a little foreign because you may not do that in every new product or enhancement that goes across or that's going on air or online. Or if it's touching a business department, you don't train the promotions department on that. But with this, we think it's really important that the entire organization knows what you're doing with digital products and knows that you're entering a new space or you're adding to the portfolio because it builds that energy. It shows people that you're evolving, your business, the company's evolving. And, let's face it, these past 6 months have been a roller coaster, to say the least. In terms of just how people are feeling about their place of employment, how they're feeling about the future for whatever media they may be selling right now or they may be involved in. And so if you're making this dramatic change to expand the portfolio, expand your reach, put yourself in front of customers in a different way, everybody should know about that, so that, you know, what I always wanted to avoid from the customer side when I was running sales teams, I never wanted a customer or a buyer to look at my salesperson or a sales manager or me and say, I didn't know you could do that. Well, we have to absolutely also have that perspective within the organization. You don't want someone within your building to not understand everything that you can do for an advertiser. And that may be you know, a traffic manager that happens to know you know, a local business owner that has 3 franchises and locations, and you know, they're talking about advertising, and she, you know, she's not prepared to say, we can help you with that. Let me put you in touch with somebody from our sales department. So that's really where that comes from. And to touch upon Steve's point again, the energy, I think, is really important, particularly as people start coming back into the buildings, or we're trying to remotivate and motivate through Zoom and virtual environments. Anything you can do to keep that messaging across the company and make sure everybody knows is going to be really, really valuable. Of course, the sales department does need the more robust training, and you're going to place new expectations on those folks to have them learn a new language, learn new products, new positioning, maybe even a new sales model where they're selling at a CPM versus a cost per point. And the reach may actually expand and be much greater than some of your legacy media products and your terrestrial reach. So understanding the value of that audience and how it matches up to your terrestrial audience, training on that. Of course, you're going to want, some case studies and have a sense of what each product can deliver, and then also understand, how to position them again with legacy media or with some of your O&O opportunities. And then last but not least, your managers being held to the same digital knowledge. That's just really, really, really important. Managers do have to know the products and all the processes involved and the workflow from A to Z. If not, you open yourself up for some pricing or some delivery errors that may have just been solved by one additional training session or a managers only session. You're putting them in an uncomfortable position in many ways here if you're adding products that are new to them. So understand that, recognize it, nurture it, and pull them aside if we need to, and let's train the managers only. Have them do a role play, kind of take them back to when they were rookie sellers and get them comfortable with it and sure-footed so that they can then become the primary resource within your building, in addition to whatever your partner is providing to you for sales training. In personal experience, I noticed when we had managers who weren't quite buying into the product, it had more to do with a lack of confidence in the product and and their knowledge about the product. So, they're not going to push something they don't understand. And that's okay, but if they're not speaking up and if you're not setting expectations and accountability, you're just going to end up with this gray space in the middle where as an owner or a general manager or GSM, you're not sure why you're not selling it. And on their seat and the sales team, they're not sure why no one's talking about it after that great kickoff event. And it may just be due to a knowledge gap at the management level. And last but not least, if you're not in a position to where you're able to measure your manager's knowledge, you may end up with what I used to refer to as a really bad game of telephone. So, let's say you have your partner, your third party, your audience extension, your media partner train your managers on a product. Your manager says, "Yep, I got it," and they go train the salespeople, but they train them with faulty information. It's just, you're losing speed to market, you're losing pricing opportunities, you're losing sales opportunities. So you really need to be sure you have a way to understand what the managers have in front of them, understand what they've retained, and then be able to coach and train them up to understand the importance of their knowledge being just a step higher than their salespeople. Steve, we're going to talk next about changing workflows to include digital processes, and this looks like a map here, and I don't think it's that overwhelming, but walk us through it, please.
Yeah, thanks. So, okay. So listen, an important distinction is as we go through this process, so we have an effective launch with energy, with enthusiasm with, this is good. This is good for the organization. This is this is why we're doing it. So everyone understands and they're on board. And we move through that implementation, the training piece, which is an ongoing, look, you never arrive on the digital side, right? So it's an ongoing process. So it is what we all have gone through it. So it hasn't changed. And JB, to your point about being remote, if you're still remote, yes, you can have effective launch solutions on whatever platform you're using, so they can still be pretty effective. We've seen groups send stuff to each of the participants, nothing big, right? It's just the fact that we're showcasing the changes here, and here's why we're doing it, and it just cements those concepts. But now this is where the rubber meets the road, right? So this is where, all right, so what do we actually have to do? So this is the workflow process. So as you go through this, you can see, having a defined workflow is infinitely better than just talking through a workflow. Say, oh, so-and-so does this, and so, yeah, okay, write all this stuff down. This is really, really important. And really provide and define expectations about, who's doing what, when, and where. But that documentation, and I'm going to get to a story here in just a minute, that really cements this, but reward the behavior. So let's walk through this, and let me show you what's really pretty interesting. We did a big rollout for a big auto manufacturer, actually you'd know them by name. We spent a lot of time helping them understand this differences, and then we documented it. We had these webinars, we had these really, really cool things. And we weren't getting the traction. We were like, okay, what are we not doing here? What's the problem? Well, the problem was as simply as graphing out the steps in the process. So where we saw the most success they actually had this listed on the wall. There was an actual, they printed out a graph. They put it in each office. It said, these are the specific steps you follow when you're actually doing these things. It just sounds so rudimentary, but think about it. Look, we have a lot of things going on in our days today. So we had a new product set. We had a new process. We had a new order process, and we got to include creative and all the things we got to do differently. It's not going to be intuitive yet. It's not going to be like, I know that. So I have to kind of understand that. So seeing that on the wall it was crazily, we went from, oh my gosh, this ain't working, to immediate success when we actually showcased the actual steps listed out on a poster on the wall. So it can be as simple as that. But look, as you go through here, remember, because we are resistant to change in general, we change in anything, right? We resist change in the way we drive to the office. We go the same way all the time. So don't be alarmed by that. It's just who we are and how we interact with change. But remember, the more engaged I am in this process, the more fun I make this, the more I can provide rewards, and rewards not in just like monetary or actual things that you can receive. The rewards and praise, employees, I've heard a statistic that 77% of the world's population never hears a praise or a kind word in a day. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's kind of scary. So the more you can actually build your folks up and say, hey, fantastic, we got these orders in, hey, we're making progress here. That encouragement, that reward environment builds an environment of ongoing success. And that's just not where you sit. That's across the board. So some of the groups are getting really creative about what they're providing, like first sale or their first digital sale, or, their first digital order completion, or their first, all these things, all these milestones that you can include that showcase value. And people are like, yeah, this is real. This is happening. So it's not just a topic of a sales meeting or a topic of a general staff meeting saying, yeah, we're making this change. They see it on a day-to-day basis. And I think as you incorporate these, you can see it is, JB, to your point, not complicated. There's some pretty easy process and steps that you can include. But I hope this helps you kind of frame out in your own radio group how you can actually utilize this and what you can do to promote this within.
Great point, Steve. And I think just, if you're taking anything away here today, just as you launch this, and the experience from start to middle, because we're never going to finish. As we add products, we'll continue to add products. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but just maintaining the energy and showcasing that buy-in from top down, and providing some reasons that workflow has changed and the process may be changed, and we may add responsibilities to sellers, to managers, to traffic throughout this, but just maintaining that consistent messaging and energy, and celebrating those wins along the way is super important. So let's talk about the ongoing digital training that's needed. So you've selected your partner, you have your products in place, traffic's in alignment, you've priced, you've sales materials, you've trained, you've retrained, the whole station knows, maybe you've uncovered some hidden talents or interests from sellers or different departments, and you're out the door. And 90 days later, typically what we talk about is kind of the first 100 days. You recognize that some things have changed. The products are maybe behaving or delivering in a way that you weren't anticipating, and so we need to revisit the tactic. We need to revisit the positioning and maybe even the pricing. And just understand that's going to happen. Digital media products are ever changing, and that the competition within the space, the capabilities and the enhancements, sometimes even the regulations around them will change. And your partner will make you aware of the big stuff, but then together you're going to have to figure out how do you train the team and keep them engaged in the products. So typically most sales meetings around the country, there's the weekly meeting. It's about 20 minutes of pacing and projections, 20 minutes of whatever the LSM, GSM wants to talk to, and then they kick it to the digital person at the end, the digital manager at the end, to bring it home and talk about what's new in digital. That's been going on as long as I've been in the business. We try to change it, and I think our clients do a pretty good job of changing it. So mix up that cadence a little bit, schedule it, there's some regular touch points, but like this slide says here, avoid marginalizing trainings, to just a small section there. You've got to showcase the importance. So even just mixing up where digital falls in the agenda can help you do things like that, or carving out to a separate meeting. This last bullet point was a client of ours here at Marketron that had really good success with creating this advanced opportunity for certain sellers. So sellers who achieved certain percentage of their budget or above, sellers who sold X number of this particular product, and so created some exclusivity within the training so that these sellers who were already high achievers were now getting advanced level training, maybe with the vendor or the partner, or from a corporate digital person, but it was a carve out. So think President's Club, or Top 10, or whatever you may call it, Circle of Excellence, whatever you may have had exposure to in the past. Consider creating something like that. Maybe not in the first 100 days, but certainly down the road. Like, how are we going to retain these top sellers and re-recruit these top sellers that are showing interest in these products, that are really leaning in, and this was just a really neat idea that this particular group had success with, and that's something we can discuss at a later time as well, how you might structure that. But just understand that the launch is just phase one, and then the first sale, that's when the real work begins. So understanding that the training plan is just as critical as to whatever you budget. You need to spend a similar amount of time creating your training plan, and almost a training budget if you can as well. So we talked about how you might reward sellers with training. Steve gets to talk about the fun part, and how folks have used incentives to reward those top sellers.
Yeah, JB, and listen, this is the fun part, because I think this is a step that a lot of organizations leave out, and I think they just assume, hey, we're making this strategic change, everyone's going to get on board, and off we go. Hey, look, incentives have been proven over how long? As long as we've been in existence, I think they really work, and especially with what I would call significant changes in an organization. So, but remember, incentives are pushing us to do what? Are pushing us for a desired outcome. So you want to identify the outcomes you'd like your teams to include, and what you'd like them to accomplish. And so, but it should include all levels of the organization. So a lot of incentive plans that I've seen have just been focused on like the sales folks. The sales folks can, okay, well, by definition, how they're paid typically is an incentive-driven model, because they're paid commissions based on what they actually do, right? right? So that is by definition a part of an incentive delivery model, but this goes beyond that. So let's talk about the groups that we've seen show success in this and how you can build incentive programs. So you can build incentive programs for, your first online demo, which may be a unique thing for a lot of radio sellers out there. It's only been typically face-to-face. And so now you're using these new products like Zoom and those kind of things to actually showcase the value prop of what you can bring to the table now and some of these new offerings you have on the digital side. So this is an important step. It could be your first order entry. It could be your first, your completed campaign. You could have a tiered model of showcasing value, of showing different value proposition of radio plus digital as that sale component, not just the digital piece alone, not just the radio thing alone. And again, that's driving to that specific behavior. But even if you're using, like, for example, your traffic manager is involved in the order entry, hey, first order entries, first order completion, first order successes, everyone in the process sees the value prop, and that changes behavior within an organization. They see it. Now, a couple things we want to point out. Have definitive rules, guidelines, steps, what people are going to receive. The ones I've seen not work as effectively is they're pretty loose. So people are like, well, I thought, okay, we should remove all those. Let's get all the questions answered out of the way on the first side, and then let's make it with a definitive start and stop date. People work better under definitive timelines. So you see that, I call it the vacation effect. You get more done the day before your vacation than the previous 2 weeks combined, right? So it's the same thing with incentives. You have definitive times, and then don't just do it once. You can have pushes throughout your launch, throughout your quarter, throughout your month or your quarter or your year. So this is something you should use on a regular basis. And it's not, you don't have to provide lots of, it's not expensive to do this. Look, I am the Starbucks gift card guy. I give them out. I've done this for years. Some of you on this may hear this, have received those. Look, it's amazing what people are feeling gratitude for little things. And a $5 Starbucks gift card just showcases value in a way that it's not expensive, but it highlights their success, and they receive it and they can hold it in their hand and say, hey, it's pretty cool. Even if they don't like coffee or like Starbucks, it's a really cool thing to actually receive. But listen, and then share the results of success. So in one of the best things I've seen in sales, I've been in sales a long time, is when you do stack rankings, you show people, and people are like, I don't like that. But it's proven to show value, and it's proven to show success over term. So it's the same thing with an incentive program. You can say who's received these and who's doing the most. And people are like, hey, I want to do that. I want to get that, right? So it just changes that whole mindset, which is something you have to continually do. It doesn't just happen once. And then you can see some additional things you can do, like you can receive an extra bonus, like for your first digital sale. That's a huge one. Or what I like to include is a bonus to include that first radio and digital sale. Because remember, combining the elements actually has a better outcome for the advertiser. So we're not only doing the right thing internally, we're doing the right thing for the folks we're actually helping in our markets get their message out about who they are and what they want, what they're providing to the consumer, right? So this is really, really an important piece. I don't ever glaze over this. I think every organization should have an incentive program. And again, it's not about what you receive more so than it is the recognition that we all look for on a regular basis, right? So this is recognition in the right way. And it combines the elements that you have in your organization today. And don't forget using your existing delivery set, your spot sales, inclusive of what you can include in that recognition and reward side. So a lot of y'all do a lot of these things already. I've seen some really great ones out there. Some of you may be new to this, but we wanted just to showcase these are some really great, easy things to digest and understand, and what you can do once you're down this path. So with that, JB, I'm going to turn it back to you because I know we have some questions coming in.
Yeah, no, and great points. I'm glad we not only included this, but finished here because, we've talked about the kickoff and this game plan and the workflow, and there's this, touches all departments, everybody's involved, and then getting through, okay, here's our first 100 days, here's what this looks like. And then having this incentive, sometimes we miss it because, we feel like we're adding a new commission opportunity, and that's what's in it for them. But I'll tell you, having watched Steve train hundreds of the thousands that he's trained. Each time he starts handing out gift cards and incentivizes the behavior. Sometimes on a surprise, sometimes then it's teed up. It always changes the energy. The room always perks up. People lean in a little bit more. They want to listen. They want to win. And think about it. They're salespeople. They're there to compete. And this is just, like I said, it's a fun one. Steve's done a great job with it over the years here, and we know we can. You guys can do it as well. So with that, yes, Steve, we do. We'll toss back to Christine here for some questions.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. That was fantastic and very informative. So now I'm going to put you under the lights and ask you a couple questions. Steve, I'm going to start with you. So we went through this and that this is a change, but how fast does a change like this take before we can see significant revenue from these efforts?
Christine, I think I get that question a lot, and I have a very broad answer. Look, we have had the opportunity of working with some of the a lot of really fantastic groups across the U.S. And here's what the good news. I've seen literally significant revenue in the first 5 days post launch, and that's not an exaggeration. I've seen large deals sold the next day. So because when people understand that they have the power of what these third-party digital products can bring to their advertisers, they connect those dots quickly. They're like, okay, wait a minute, why not me? Why can't I? Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, and a lot of it has to do with the acceptance of the overall change in general. So, most reps will see this and say, hey, man, this is a great opportunity, revenue for me, and I can do this. And I've seen it literally change lives. And I've seen it change stations. I've seen it change groups, because there's so much of it happening in and around every market. We just think it ought to work through our partners who have trusted relationships already established, right? So this is an important thing to point out. Now, on the average, it'll take a team to migrate through the learnings and the understandings and focus on specific product sales, in that first 30 days. But what my recommendation, if you want to see significant revenue, build everything, all the structures around it to showcase it, mandate it, expect it. So, and again, if I say, hey, here it is, good luck to you, you're going to get that kind of response back, right? Okay, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. For the groups that have said, we're committed, we're in, we're doing it, that's the groups we have seen move the needle significantly, and it can be in short durations. Now, not every rep will be on board, we get that. But when the reps see success in their team from the other, they're like, oh, wait a minute, they can do it, I can do it. Absolutely right. So that process and that environment will showcase value, and it can be in short durations.
Wonderful. Yeah. So as long as it's set up for success can happen quickly. I like that. Thank you, Steve. So kind of moving on that topic, and JB, this one's for you. You did cover this pretty well regarding training, but and having it in the weekly sales meeting, and that it needs to be continuing. But kind of going further with that, how often should training be provided? And is there like a right cadence where it's just enough, it's not too little, it's not too much? What are your thoughts?
Sure. No, good question. And, I think minimally you're looking at typically a weekly touch with your sales team. So pulling them together, and it's important to talk about all products and understanding that those meetings, if you're focused on, one big sales event, that's probably going to take the majority, and maybe not everything gets touched on. Maybe if you're not talking about regional buys, you don't get as much time to talk about digital. We really need to push this one particular thing. That's going to happen. So, aim for weekly, but also, particularly right now, utilize, if you have access to them, utilize self-paced opportunities. And, an online learning management system, Marketron Learning Center, those things that are there that you can look at in advance to understand what the content is, and maybe set expectations for particular training units that every seller needs to complete. Maybe new sellers need to complete these in addition to the ones that everybody else is doing. and through your normal sales training, tools, just creating and taking advantage of this time right now. That if there is an online portal, set some expectations for using those, assign some courses. One thing we've seen from top performers through these past 6 months here, where we are all remote for the most part, maybe remote for the foreseeable future, is a renewed emphasis on training and coaching. So really what I'd caution here, and the question was about how often and what sort of cadence, but if you have made those steps to add in additional training right now while people are outside of the office, don't lose sight of that, and don't shelve it when everybody goes back in. Figure out how you can keep that sort of expectation or that sort of rhythm going as we get back to normal here. But use those tools. Aim for weekly. Like I said, and don't just make the digital portion the last 10 minutes of the meeting, or that's kind of the end of the session where people start packing up and walking out. So since we're virtual here, hopefully nobody's doing that now. So I'll get back to you, Christine. You can take the next question.
Great, thanks, JB. So kind of on that, and talking about the sales meetings and with your sellers, and we touched on how there's going to be some really top performers and there's going to be some stragglers. So with that in mind, is this, meaning like the digital rollout, is this really for everyone? Should we put a budget on every seller for this? What do you think, JB?
That's another one rooted in experience here. Yes, I mean there is a budget for every seller. A very, very tough lesson I learned as a first-time digital sales manager a long time ago was that the budget and the expectation won't always mirror what the seller is doing in their traditional media. So a 20-year vet with a $5 million list, she didn't get $1 million digital goal, but her list didn't support that. The contacts, the access to decision makers, the access to digital budgets, it just didn't align that, if she's doing this on spot, she can do X on digital. It just doesn't work that way. Additionally, we weren't going to maybe have a really severe punishment or talking to if she didn't hit a $500,000 digital goal. Or a $50,000 digital goal if she's a $2 million biller or whatever. Because again, every AE on your team has strengths and weaknesses, and digital is important to all of them. It's important for all of them. But I guess what I'm saying is, if you're building your budgets and your goals for the first time or relaunching, everybody needs a budget, but apply some expectations based on who they have access to, what kinds of buyers they have access to, and then budget and back into your budget accordingly. You want to create stretch goals and you want to push them, but understanding that a top biller, doesn't always get your top digital goal.
That's really good insight, that it's not just looking at the hard current numbers of their spot, but that really what that list is. So I think it's a really good point. Hitting on stretch goals and budgets and having these incentives. Steve, coming back to you, because you are the king of incentives, and as a recipient of a Starbucks gift card, I can verify the enthusiasm that is generated for them. But what have you seen some of the most effective incentive programs out there?
Yeah, Christine. Yeah, and look, I think it's just a thoughtful setup. So it's not just a random attempt right here. It's a very specific path you follow on the incentive side. So one of the things JB referenced earlier is one of the groups we worked with on the incentive side was they had very specific incentive. They built incentives. So the more you sold, the more access to more advanced training sessions you receive. And you think, well, how's that an incentive? Well, it's surprisingly what happened was when these reps were seeing success digitally, they wanted to know more because there was more opportunity out there for them to gain, right? So the ability to showcase some level of success bumped them into this next tier of training and support and things that they received because it was really, really beneficial to them. And they saw it firsthand, right? They saw it on their paycheck. So it wasn't a like an exercise in like, oh, it'd be nice to do. They literally saw that. So that was one thing we saw hand in glove. But I think the incentive program where everyone can see success, if you build an incentive program that's unattainable, meaning I look at that and say, I'll never be able to hit that, I'll never reach that, then it's not an incentive program at all, right? So it's almost like you're de-incentivizing these folks. So they're going to realize when they first get started, I'll never get that. So having where an individual can win based on their abilities, not just always in a team event. So there's always that one seller who wins everything because they're good, right? That's how it works. So everyone just stops because they know that, oh, that person's going to win because they always win. So if you could build an incentive program where it can affect me as an individual. So when I do my first deal, or I do my first thing, or I have my first combined radio and digital sale, or I have this certain threshold of revenue that I'm hitting in that, okay, these are programs that you can include and provide that and show that and list that and include that, because you'll see these things show up. People take pride in those, right? They've earned that. So that recognition and reward model is alive and well. And I think really take advantage of it with an opportunity like this as you launch into this process.
I think that's a great point. I mean, if you set up a program for where everyone has the ability to win, then you're going to win as a whole. Really good point. Thank you, Steve. All right, we've got time for one more question, and I'm gonna throw you under again, Steve. So, thinking of this and thinking of everything we talked about, what is maybe the one fundamental exercise that you should make sure all of the sales reps go through in this process?
Wow, that's a
loaded question. I know, but
yeah, it is. Yeah, so let me think. So, I think if I look back at specifically running digital sales teams, some of the things that we did that I think made it a fundamental aspect of it. So we would do a combination of things, and I'm going to give you a couple because it's kind of hard just to say just one.
Sure.
One of the things was fundamentals of understanding common objections in the digital buy. Look, you're rolling out these new solutions, and it's advertisers going to say, "Hey, well, I've been doing this with this other group for why now? Why you?" Those kind of objections are very, very common. And I think if those shut the reps down on their first sale or their first series of calls, they may get a little discouraged. So the ability fundamentally to answer the most basic of objections that sellers or that advertisers are going to have out there. I think that number one, and you can do that. We did it in a different fashion. So we did it in written form. We did it in group settings. We did it in a lot of different ways, but we were really showcasing that everyone has to identify what these objections are and be able to answer them. So they can answer them in a group setting. They can answer them in a way that becomes second nature to them. That was something that we saw a huge value in building confidence in the rep. And that confidence rep will certainly translate into revenue. So that's something that we've seen as groups migrate from into selling one particular product like Spot into a digital side. That confidence level is a little bit lower. So building that confidence on the first side is the first thing to do. The other fundamental thing I'll do, look, I'm a big guy on don't tell me what you can do, show me what you can do, right? So we built certifications on deliveries and simple ones. Just, hey, walk me through your pitch, walk me through what you know, that gives me a gauge. It's not an exercise of let me point out what you don't know and what you're doing wrong. It tells me where you are so I can better coach you and help you and guide you, right? So these two things I think are fundamental into that continuous confidence conundrum that we stay in on the sales side. But when you see the dots connected at the rep level, it's amazing what happens to the organizations, right? So this is fun to talk about, and that is a tough question, but Christine, I hope that answered it. But I really appreciate that question.
Yeah, no, I think those are really excellent points, and again, getting to the core of where people need to start. So thank you, and with that, guys, that is all the time we have today. So again, if your question wasn't answered, we will have someone reach out to you soon. So don't worry, we will get back to you on your particular question. I want to thank JB and Steve for their time and their insight today. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We will be sending an email out soon that will have a link to watch the full recording of this webinar today, as well as a download of the presentation you saw, and a link to register for our next and our final webinar in this series on October 28th, which will cover performance and roadblocks. And with that, I thank you all. Have a great day.